Right, hello and welcome to today's podcast where we'll be discussing the COVID-19 lockdown and the impact it could be having on our dogs and cats. It's brought to you today by Spectrum Brands, supplier of IAMS, Eukanuba, Smart Bones, 8-in-1 and Tetra, not forgetting those fish. So joining us today is none other than certified clinical behaviorist Karen Wild, who is an expert in dog and cat behaviour, as well as being an incredibly lovely, kind and wonderful human being. I know you're going to love listening to her today. So really grateful to Karen for her time. We're going to try to keep this as positive as possible because we know there's a lot of sadness going on in the world at the moment with COVID-19. We're going to discuss the opportunities that the current situation offers to our dogs and cats, as well as some of the problems the lockdown might be causing for your pets at home. And I'm sure Karen will offer us some great insights and some solutions for any problems that your pets might be having right now. So we're here to help at a time of unrest with COVID-19. So before I introduce Karen, my name is Kelly and I'm the veterinary manager at Spectrum Brands. But enough about me. You're not here to hear me talk. You're here to listen to the wonderful Karen. So let me introduce her quickly before we get straight into today's questions. So Karen Wild is a certified clinical animal behaviorist with over 20 years of experience working with pets. She runs the behaviour practice Paw Print Pets near Peterborough, that's a lot of P's, working with family dogs and cats on veterinary referrals. Karen is a member, and I'm going to list all of these things now, so bear with me. She's a member of the Fellow of Animal Behaviour Clinicians. She's a full member of the Association of Pet Behaviour Counsellors, the Animal Behaviour and Training Council, and is a registered clinical animal behaviourist and animal training instructor. So she has got a lot of qualifications. She's even written books. She's written 5 of them, including What Your Dog Wants and 21 Days to the Perfect Dog. That sounds like something I need in my life. Her goal is to communicate welfare and training to help all of us to try and understand our pets better, because as she says, pets have people. I think that's brilliant. Karen has worked with a number of well-known politicians with past visits to Downing Street. Quite apt at the moment. She's worked with numerous celebrities and their pets, including BBC broadcaster and comic relief director Emma Freud, Dawn O'Porter and Chris O'Dowd, and has even been described by Davina McCall as fab. So Karen, I'm a bit jealous now, Davina McCall and number 10. Tell us a bit more about that.
Oh, these, the interesting thing about working with pets is that they don't mind who you are, how well known you are, where you live, what you do. They don't know all of those things really in any great detail. So it's a great leveler, just having a dog or a cat that, just sees you as a human being, basically. So yeah, it's really interesting to work with people that are probably more well known. However, the cases are similar, the problems are similar. Everybody has, a deep caring for their pets, and that's the way it should be, and want them to have, a nice life. And I think that's fair enough.
Yeah. And so it just goes to show even people living in Downing Street have issues with their pets.
Not necessarily.
Guys, if you've got a dog or a cat that's giving you grief, it happens to the best of us.
Well, sometimes I think they want things to go. I think a lot of us, maybe we don't necessarily have issues, but we do want the best for our animals. We want them to have a good time, want them to have a nice life, and that starts from when they're tiny. So I think it's a good idea to get expert advice when you start, because you want to give them a really good foundation. So I think it's it's helpful.
Listen, I know you're very busy at the moment, particularly, and so I want to get straight into this. I'm really grateful and honoured for your time, so thank you. Want to get straight into the positive stuff. We know that things are changing at the moment, and after the lockdown unlocks, do you think that you'll be offering online consultations? Because obviously talking to you now, this is the first time we've had an interaction that's not face-to-face, but it actually it works quite well. So I would imagine that if people have a dog or a cat at home and they're looking for advice, that maybe you'll be doing more of this kind of stuff in the future.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, obviously, we have people that still have urgent need, and or they might have got a puppy and they're really stuck. So it's still really helpful. After the first 5 minutes of getting used to the idea, we can still give advice, we can still help, we can still see what's going on in the home. A lot of, particularly with behavior work, is to do with the pet's environment. So we're right there on video. It's not like being on the phone. It's not as great as being there in person sometimes, but it's still really, really useful. And I've had several consultations now that I probably would have seen them in person, but they're making really good progress, really good, given that it's a video, and we're still running our classes. So my training classes are still going. And again, I can see what they're doing because they've got the camera running, you know, right in front of them. So it means that we haven't been stopped. And the other really good thing is that we've been able to reach out to people that are either they don't have somebody near them, or, you know, there's otherwise a reason why they can't access help. We can help them on video. So I've got clients abroad now that, you know, we're able to help, and they would otherwise not have access. So you know, it's worked out really well. So I think, yeah, definitely, all being well, and we've got to consider the ethics, we've got to consider the animals' welfare. We still go on vet referral, there's no doubt about any of those things, but we are looking at, yeah, being able to reach out better and do more follow-up, you know, have a face-to-face chat with someone rather than on the phone. Yeah, I think we'll definitely be doing this more.
Because I know I've spoken to people in the past where they're looking for people, their expert advice from people like you, but they might be living on the other side of the country and they can't get to someone that they really trust or that they've heard a lot of things about. So I guess one good thing about the situation that we're going through is home working, and helping people remotely, like through video conference calls like this, could really help. So that's good. That's really good. Good to hear.
Yeah.
As we said, we want to really talk about as much positive stuff as possible. So in your opinion, your expert opinion, how do you think the current lockdown might be helping dogs and cats? Because obviously we talk a lot about cats, but sorry, we talk a lot about dogs, but not so much about cats. What do you think is running in their favour at the moment with the lockdown?
Well, you know, it has been a bit, everyone was a bit, especially with dogs, I think we were all a bit anxious because we were told, you know, you can't go out as much as maybe we used to. We can't go to the places we used to take, you know, you can't go for a wander in the woods and things like perhaps that we used to do. And I think that's with good reason. I don't think anyone's trying to restrict. But what I'm finding is that I'm getting reports from a lot of my clients, particularly those where their dogs weren't, you know, were perhaps struggling with other dogs being around. They're more under control now, so they're not being flooded with the attention from a dog that might be frightening them. Obviously the downside of that is they're not getting the social contact, but in some ways there are a lot of dogs that I work with that just can't cope with that. So that's actually quite a plus for them. I also think that dogs like having us around, and I think it's good opportunity for us to start to get those little niggles that we might have not ironed out before. You know, perhaps the dog's begging, or they might be, you know, not quite toilet trained well enough. Well, we're at home, so we've got a really good opportunity to crack down on that in the nicest possible way. Just say, okay, I'm here now, I've got a responsibility, I love my dog, and I want to help them learn. Okay, ask to go out to the toilet, or, you know, let me know if there's something the matter. I also think that, as we know, and this goes for cats as well, as long as we don't overdo what they want, they're a huge soothing influence on us. You know, we know that having pets is good for our well-being, as long as we do things within their, you know, like I say, what they enjoy, then we're good for them too. And that's a good thing, because we can stroke them, we can, you know, pay attention to them when we're feeling a little bit low.
When you say we need to watch that we're not overdoing what they want, what do you mean by that?
Well, it's easy to sort of overdo it and use your pet as a bit of a prop for your emotions, you know, and they are, I mean, we've kind of chosen the pets that we have for various reasons. So I think it's almost like, you know, we've developed them to have this social interest in us. But even then, we forget how much dogs and cats, you know, need to sleep. Cats more than dogs so much, but also dogs need to rest a great deal. And so we might be feeling a bit, you know, just seen something horrible on the news and go, oh, you know, where's the dog? And the dog's having a good old snooze and dreaming about, I don't know, chasing rabbits or whatever. And then there's a human sort of stroking them. And that's the same for cats. It's important to respect their need to get away and have their own time. And I think one of the other
Making
good
me
things.
laugh, actually.
Oh, really?
What you're saying is really resonating with me. So we're in week 5. Sorry, talk about my own. And the reason I'm talking to you is so I'm selfish. I want a consultation. This is for other people, but I'm hoping what I'm about to say will resonate with others as well. So we're in week 5 now of lockdown. I've been making sure that I've been going out for runs every single day with my dogs. And on Saturday, I went to get my dog's leads, 2 dogs leads out of the cupboard. And my one dog, my cockapoo, bless her, who loves going out, and she's 4 years old and she's never not wanted to go out. I could see her in the corner of my eye reversing. She was literally reversing, and she went into the other room and she sat on the couch. So I thought, okay, maybe whatever. Put the lead on her. I tried to remove her from the couch. Now, when I say that it was like her bum was super glued to the couch, I'm not exaggerating. She did not want to go out. And I went out with my other dog. I came back and she was in the same position. And she looked at me, she had bedhead, and she looked at me like she'd been there the whole time. We were out for an hour. So it really is that's just struck a chord with me.
Yeah.
That it's not about what we think they want. We've got to read the signals and understand what it is they need at that time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. And I think it's something that we have to be extra aware of at the moment. And we have got the opportunity to just not kind of peer at them the whole day. But, you know, if our cats are just hiding, you know, they're going into the wardrobe and they didn't used to, or they're just kind of, where are they? Or they're under the chair. They're almost certainly just not overly happy at the moment, and they want a bit of peace and quiet. Now, if they're doing that a lot, it might be that they're poorly, and vets are still providing service. So if you're worried about them, for goodness sake, ring your vet. Don't think, oh, well, I can't. You know, you can. They've got very specific ways to, you know, to keep safety from their staff, from the animals, whatever. But if you're, like you say, your dog sort of went off and got up on the sofa and was like, I don't really feel like doing this, then unless it's an emergency, can we just go, all right, that's fine, it's not a big deal, we'll maybe offer it later if they don't want to do it. Are they okay? Yeah, they're okay. They're maybe just a bit tired, and maybe they've just had enough for a bit. We all feel 100%. We can all feel a bit, you know, from day to day. So I don't think it's unreasonable to expect that from our pets as well, you know. I mean,
and it's
we're
funny
friends,
because
aren't we?
Sorry,
we're friends, aren't we? So we wouldn't do that with our friends.
Yes, exactly. That's so beautifully put. We're friends. And there was a part of me that, when I was trying to pull her off the couch, because, you know, I'm, like you said, we use our pets sometimes as props. I'm like, I need to go out, you're coming with me. And I had to catch myself and think, okay, she really doesn't look like she wants to go. And maybe it's okay to leave her. And I really think that was the best idea for her at that point. But I was that close to just pulling her off and making her come with me. And I'm glad, listening to you today, that I didn't do that. And I was a bit more sensitive to her needs.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a fine line between, oh, they really need to do this because I have, you know, I have to go, I've got to, you know, do this thing, in which case, yeah, that's the emergency scenario where you might force them. I don't really like forcing my dogs or cats to do anything, because I just think it's unfair. If it's something that I see more than once and I think, okay, maybe I need to do some training with them to kind of, what are they worried about, you know, to help them get over that, that's much fairer, you know. Sometimes you get dogs that are worried about their harnesses, which is another thing that you can be really working on at the moment, because when you're trying to get your dog used to something, you need time to sit there with them and pair that thing that they're worried about with something that they enjoy. And so I've worked with a few clients most recently whose dogs would just bolt the minute they see the harness, and think, well, okay, right. You know, when you're taking them out, the rest of the day you're here, set your alarm, you know, every half an hour, every hour, whatever your dog can put up with, just sit there with the harness, give them a treat, hold it there, give them a treat. If they don't run away, give them a reward, and then gradually start to help them to put their head into it or their body into it. And, you know, we've got more time to do that now, certainly more inclination. Even if we're working, which a lot of us are, you can still do those things at the times when you're not. So in the evening, when you're just going, oh, you know, what am I going to do with myself? Here's a good technique to teach your pet, you know, why not?
Because, and you mentioned the evening, sometimes dogs in particular, and we will talk more about cats later, but for now, with dogs, they can become a bit restless at night, can't they? And I know you've explained to me in the past why that is. So what could you just explain to people that are listening, why is it sometimes, you know, your dog may be sleeping throughout the day and then all of a sudden at 9 o'clock at night when you're wanting to watch something fabulous on the TV, they spring into action and start growling, but talking to you and wanting to get your attention,
placing that ball in your lap, or I think it's mainly something we see with very young dogs, so puppies in particular. We all have this kind of moment where my clients will say, well, they have this mad 5 minutes around about tea time, you know, they're all bombing around the house and I don't know what to do, and it's like the wall of death round and round. And generally, originally, you know, dogs are they're most active if they're hunting, for example, at dawn and dusk. So if you think about that, it makes sense that, you know, they're going to be probably at their most active at those times, and then it's us that put the routine on them to say, you know, okay, we expect you to sleep all night and we expect you to be, you know, calm here and eat now. And you know, so with younger dogs in particular, they have this huge energy burst around about tea time, and a lot of people aren't sure what to do. So, you know, if they've learned that the minute you sit on the chair and you're not doing anything, that they can poke something at you and you have to play with them, well, that's a decision you make whether you want to interact with them or not. If they're a little bit older, have you actually unwittingly taught them, you know, that it's a clear attention getter, and accept that they need you, but try and think, okay, can I do this in a different way so I'm not getting annoyed by it? So, you know, I don't think attention seeking is a problem, but I think that it's the dog expressing a need. So I think that's fine. If you've got a young dog, you can do certain activities with them. So you could do a little bit of training. Obviously, I'm a trainer, so that would be my first go-to. What can I teach them to do with all this energy? If they're just crazy bonkers and you really think, you know, this isn't really doing anything, give them something to do that doesn't involve you. So like a foraging toy, and this works with cats and young cats too. Give them something where they can forage the food out of it. Now you might have treat balls and those kinds of things. You could put their dinner in it, you know, some nice tasty food in there. It doesn't have to be anything that's going to make them fat. And then they'll actively pursue that themselves. They don't need you involved. So they're still hunting, as they might be doing in nature when all the rabbits would be out and about, and they're off, you know, at dusk chasing those around. In, you know, in a household, they could be, you know, digging through a few cardboard boxes, or like I say, rolling a ball around so treats drop out. Or if you haven't got any of those things and you know, you're not sure what else to do, if you've got a garden, you can sometimes scatter their food out there so they spend their time hunting for dinner. You know, so don't just put it in a bowl, because that's tea time. That's the time when they might well be more active. You might as well use it for burning off a bit of energy.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, so while you're trying to watch the news at 9 o'clock, get your update about COVID-19, you just pop something outside and let them run off some energy out there. It's interesting that you mentioned about control. You know, we want to, one thing that COVID-19 has taught us, hasn't it, really, hopefully, is that we really don't have a lot of control over really important things. And sometimes we're wanting to control our pets, and that might not be the best way to help them. Do you agree with that?
I think that control is a good word to use, because there's a difference between force and control. So training is kind of a negotiation, but what we must have is still a boundary. So I use positive reinforcement. I use reward-based training. You know, when I first started in this industry ages ago, we used to use force a lot, and it wasn't very nice. But now we've got more common sense about things. We tend to teach them what we want, so that the dog understands, or the cat to some degree. Okay, you do this thing, then I do that, then I get this thing back, and that's how I live my life. So you can still have control over them through sort of reward-based training. So control can be asking your dog to get off the sofa, or, you know, asking them to do something that they might not necessarily feel like doing, but they still get paid, you know, with wages at the end of it, so they end up doing it. And that's what training is all about for me, is this kind of win-win situation. Whereas if you're controlling them in a force aspect, unless it's an absolute emergency, what you end up with then is kind of a win-lose. And your pet will remember that, and next time they either won't let you get near them, or they might escalate their behavior, so they might get worse. You know, they might start growling, they might start biting, those kinds of things, and that's where problems sort of start to develop. So I think if we take quite a positive attitude towards it and say, right, you know, of all the things I don't want my dog to do, you know, I don't want them to jump up, I don't want them to chew the furniture, I don't want them to bark, you know, what do I want them to do instead? And I'm going to teach that, and then they've got an option, and then I just prevent them doing the other thing as much as I can, and then you end up with a really good relationship with them, and that's based on trust, isn't it?
Yeah, and a friendship and partnership, like you said right at the beginning.
Yeah, you know, when we've looked at, you know, pet owner wellness, you know, well-being is a really important thing at the moment. I mean, for all of us, we've got to look after ourselves. And there are certain factors that are, you know, important to us as pet owners, a sense of family, you know, a sense of companionship, those kind of things, as well as exercise and the other things that we need. They're really important to people, you know, so I think this is a good opportunity to start building that up. Now, I know that one of the things that we talked about briefly before was what happens when, you know, what happens when this ends? You know, what's the future going to be like? What do you see that as? Have you got any visual sort of idea of how the new life is going to be?
No.
I know.
No, I don't think any of us have a crystal ball, but I think it would be nice for us to think at least and work hard to try and maintain as much positivity and really take forward the learnings that we're gaining now, and not forget those, you know, that actually what is important. It's about connecting with one another. I think sometimes as humans we place so much importance on materialism and getting stuff and doing things, but actually really you're at your happiest when you are got your family. We're designed as human beings to have this nurturing love towards our family, our nearest and dearest. And even in a time of actually this lockdown, I feel like I'm communicating with people more than I have done, you know, having little meetings with people on a Friday night with a glass of wine that I haven't spoken to literally for years. And I'm hoping that continues. And sometimes in the past, if I'm honest, I have let work get on top of me and maybe not taking my dogs out for exercise every day when I've known they've needed it and wanted it. That's the key learning from today. And I'd like to think that I would maintain that I continue that and realize that it's really important. It's not what I necessarily need all the time. I need to think about them just as much as I think about my two-legged family members.
Yeah.
Four-legged family members just as much, and their needs all day, every day, you know.
Yeah, do you know something that's I'm really glad you said that, because that's made me think one of the other factors that we, you know, that's important to pet owners that we, you know, when research has been done is on fun and play. And you've kind of touched on that, where we're almost forced to find some fun now that isn't materially based, you know, so we're not going out and spending money on things, you know, we're not perhaps going to the coffee shop or whatever, which I mean there's an aspect of that we all miss. But you know, it sounds really throwback and sort of, oh, we used to have fun in the old days and all that kind of thing. But actually, I think a lot of us are finding that the fun aspect is there. You know, it's there, it's right in front of us, and we can tap into that. But I also think that it can be a bit wearing sometimes to be told, you know, this is a time of personal improvement and this is a time that you should be learning the violin or whatever. I also think that it's a good time to just sit and relax and enjoy just being there, you know, with your pets. Just sit there and have a look at them and just think, you know, gosh, I really love you, you know, sort of try and make sure that you spend that special time with them. And you don't need to do anything else sometimes, you know, you can just sit there and just enjoy being there. Look at what they do.
Yeah.
You know, they just, some of them, I was watching my dogs the other day, they just wander in and out sometimes. You know, the cat comes wandering in and out. He does his thing, you know, then he goes and has a nap. Then he gets up, then he has a wash, then he has his dinner, it's quite a nice life, really. I think we could learn a lot.
You mentioned there about your dogs and your cats just wandering in and out. As an expert, you know when your dog and cat is happy, right? You know the signs.
I'd hope so.
If you don't, then maybe we'll stop this conversation now. But no, I'm sure I know you know what the signs are. So for those of us who may not be that familiar, what signs are we looking for to make sure that our dogs, what are they telling when they're happy? How are they communicating that to us? Because I do hear sometimes people say, oh, my dog does smile, and that they're talking about those images that you see on social media of the dog with that really tight lip that looks like it's smiling. That dog is smiling.
It's a subtle thing. I think that when someone describes a human smile, you know, we can visualize that straight away, but we know in other species smiling isn't really a thing. So what someone might describe as their dog smiling, they've got that inherent feeling of their dog actually being happy. So we're not just looking at what their mouth's doing, we're looking at the whole body, you know. And So just showing their teeth isn't necessarily a smile. And we do have
What are
some.
they doing when they're doing that though? When the dog does that and someone says they've trained the dog almost to smile, show me your teeth.
Well, if they've trained
doing.
it, that is not an instinctive response. It's not an emotional response. So a trained response is literally lift your mouth like this. That is a trained response. So it's like teaching a dog to bark on cue. Dogs bark for reasons, but if the reason is I've just said bark, you get this kind of strange noise. It's not, I mean, with my dogs, not every dog barks like that, but it's not the same sound as if they might make if they were, if they saw someone outside. That's a different sound. So if it's an emotionless, just lift their lips like that, then that's not got any happy emotion or anything really specific behind it. Whereas
just doing it because they've been taught to do it,
right? So. And that's more of a performance thing. If you've got a dog that's been running around and they're chasing their ball and they come back to you and their mouth's wide open and you can see all their teeth and their tongue's lolling and their tail's swishing about and they're panting, everybody will feel that kind of emotion of happy, or what we might describe as joyful, or those are the words that we probably would attribute in some way. People might then say, oh, my dog's smiling, because they can see their teeth, but it's definitely not always a happy response.
It's almost like a relaxed face, isn't it?
Right.
To me, they're two very different things. That we were talking about originally was that tight, like mouth, look like it's trying to imitate a human smile, and then there's that dog running around with his tongue hanging out, just looking very relaxed. It's a body language thing as well as the facial expression.
Right. Yeah, and also you've got if you've got sort of a tight, tense face, so not a trained response but another emotional response. So a dog might lift their lips and show their teeth and their lip might flicker, or they are they don't necessarily need to be growling. This is something that people don't always catch on to, that the dog can be showing its teeth because it's worried, and it's feeling under pressure, but it's very tense, and that's a very different look. Often if you look at the rest of the dog, because we might look at a photo, but if it's the dog right in front of us, their ears are usually tight and pulled back to their head. If they've got ears that are flat on their head, obviously they might be sort of really hitched back. If their ears are up, they're often angled backwards. So, it depends on the dog. Their tail might be wagging, but it will be extremely tense and probably quite a high tail carriage. So it's a different feel, because the emotion that they are experiencing is completely different. So that emotion there would be, please leave me alone, or stop doing that. In which case, what we need to do, the common sense thing to do, is to immediately just think, oh, okay, I don't quite know what's going on here. I'm not going to push the dog. What I'm going to do is decide what it was that led up to that. I'll back off right now. Let everybody calm down, or stop doing whatever it is that's making them worried, and then contact somebody who knows what they're talking about. Not just go on a forum somewhere. Speak to your vet, speak to your behaviorist, get a proper referral. If your dog's doing those kind of things repeatedly, then they're not happy, so they need a bit of extra attention. What I don't advise people to do is try and punish that behavior, because what tends to happen then is the dog feels worse, and next time it gets worse. So it's not that we want it, we don't, but what we need to do is probably look at the other reasons why it's happening. So smiling can be, my dog's really happy, but just showing their teeth is not necessarily the same thing.
Yeah, and interesting you talked about the forums, because it's quite an easy habit for us to fall into, isn't it? If we don't know about something, we go online and we Google stuff, and then we get maybe the right information but maybe not the right information. That's why it's cool for us and the listeners to be able to hear someone who really, really knows what they're talking about, so we can have reliable, useful advice.
I think the internet is a great resource, and it's also a very dangerous resource, and I've certainly had clients that have come to me and said, oh, I was told on such and such a page to do this, and then my dog tried to bite me, and then and it's kind of like, are those people insured because they've just given you advice that's meant you've got bitten? So it's not coming down with a big hammer on the internet. I think it's a great resource, but quality sources are sometimes really hard to find.
So it's great. But do you think our dogs and our cats can feel that the world's a bit topsy-turvy at the moment? Obviously we know, because we're watching the news. I know that's something you referred to the other day. We know things are strange. We know we're informed. We're listening to the information on the TV. Our dogs and cats obviously not, but can they feel that things are strange, do you think? What's your thoughts?
I definitely think they know when things aren't quite going well in the family, but then that could be, you know, perhaps somebody's died or somebody's getting married, or, you know, it's Christmas, so they have to actually adapt to an awful lot of strange human behaviors, I think. And the more experienced they are, probably the easier they will roll with those, you know, those changes. I think right now, because it's such a magnitude of change, I'm not sure if they have any idea about that. I don't think, I'd be very surprised if they've ever come across like everyone staying at home for this period of time, you know, or perhaps the kind of anxieties that are going along with that, because a lot of us have got, you know, we've got key workers that are still going out to work and having to be put, you know, at risk and doing their best to resolve that. People that have been furloughed, people that have lost their businesses, people that, you know, would normally have that routine. I definitely think our pets are aware of that, you know.
They feed off our emotions.
Yeah, I think we have that bond with them. So unless they absolutely are very independent and just carry on with everything the same, and I bet you there are some pets that do that, particularly with cats. I think their routine has probably stayed pretty much the same. Some cats, you know, then they don't engage that much, but a lot of our pets do. So I don't think we need to worry about them in the sense that they are hugely adaptable. So if we're seeing behavior things that have come out since that we're not happy about, then yes, seek help. Particularly get a vet check because they might be poorly. Seek expert help. But they are incredibly adaptable usually already. So I hope that whilst they are going to be aware of it, that hopefully it won't have too much of a negative impact. I mean, that's my hope, because I think, you know, we still care about them. So yeah, even within our families, we're getting a bit ratty with one another sometimes, aren't we? So, you know,
there was a lovely video on social media I saw the other day that did make me titter. It was the two corgis that were at each other and like walking away and then like having a little go at one another. I don't know if you've seen it, but the wording was couples in quarantine at the moment, and it's we're all having a little bit more sensitive maybe. You know, I'm very fortunate that I've got a lovely family, a lovely home. Not everyone is that fortunate, but I can even feel it, you know, that I feel a little bit on edge from time to time.
Well, you know, I think one of the good things is that we, you know, even if the cat sat on our knee and we're watching the news or watching the update, you know, and dreading what's going to be said next and looking at graphs and going, oh, you know, they don't know about that, you know, they don't have that level of language comprehension. They don't, you know, so they will know if we're kind of thinking, oh my goodness, and maybe have a bit of a cry or whatever, but they would respond to that. But any more than that, how could they, you know? So I think as long as we're careful, like I said earlier, you know, we're careful not to overwhelm them with anything, frighten them, those sort of things that we would normally do because we care about them.
Don't overuse them as an emotional prop too much.
Yeah, and it's easy to do. It's easy to do that. I think particularly with cats, their behavior is a lot more subtle. So with dogs, we talked about their facial signals. Cats don't really have that many muscles in their faces even to give those signals off. So it's more about, you know, are the kids still playing with the cat a bit more and going, oh, I got scratched? Well, the cat doesn't want the attention. That's why they're scratching. You know, they'd rather get up out of the way, or they'd rather be able to walk through the room without somebody going and picking them up. And that might just be that the kids are home more. So it's not, and nobody's being spiteful. It's literally just, we love them. Sometimes we love them a bit too much.
Yeah, I mean, obviously from a veterinary perspective, we always talk about cats showing signs of stress with feline lower urinary tract disease, cystitis symptoms, over grooming, etc. From your point of view, from a behavioural point of view, what are the signs that cats are struggling? You know, you've already mentioned about, you know, maybe their facial expressions aren't as varied as dogs. So what should people be looking out for?
I mean, you've mentioned some of the key ones as well, like if they're over grooming, certainly if you see bald patches, so that could be a veterinary thing, or it could be a behavioural thing, or it could be interplay between the two. Toileting issues, so if they're not using the litter trays that they used to, or how they used to, if they're toileting elsewhere, those kinds of things are really big signals actually that all is not well. And as I say, there is an interplay with illness there or pain, but it's also things like, you know, are they are they just avoiding you when they used to be around you? You know, are they more vocal? You know, are they kind of needing you a lot more? Is it something that you've noticed in terms of, you know, your pet? I always say to people, you know your dog, you know your cat better than I do, and you know what their routine is. And so if we're helping people with behavior problems, we might say, okay, well, what's changed in their routine? Is it, you know, are they awake more? Are they sleeping a lot more? Because often cats will sleep a lot more when they're feeling a bit, you know, awful. You know, what is it that's changed for them significantly in their environment? Because you won't see giveaway signals anywhere near as much as you would with a dog. So it might just be a lot more subtle. So it may be that we've never noticed before anyway, you know, cat just comes and goes. But it might be, oh my goodness, the cat started climbing up on the work surfaces and they never used to, or I found him on top of the wardrobe, you know, and he never normally goes up there. So my question would be, so is the cat avoiding something? Are they worried about something? You know, is something noisy or something scared them? Or is there more going on in a room that they would normally rest in? Those things are the giveaways, if you like. What we don't want, we definitely don't want, say if you've got more than one cat in the household and they used to get on fine and they suddenly start squabbling now, those kind of things are really a sign, particularly with cats, that things have gone much too far. They're so subtle usually, and they will be they try and be very polite around one another generally, and maintain this kind of distance that they're very good at. So if they're actually fighting, you know, then really you need to get hold of your vet and get them to refer you. It's not to frighten anyone, it's really just to say this is a big change for us all, it's a big change for them, and not everything is down to COVID-19. Sometimes it might just be that they've, you know, developed a problem.
Yeah, sure. And I mean, if we look at this from a very practical point of view, children homeschooling, they're at home all the time, and the cat is now stressed and is over grooming and has spots of alopecia on the tummy, for example, and we know it's not a medical issue, the cat is healthy. What would you say to people? You know, you can't kick your kids out and say, let them go to school, look after the cat. What do you do in that situation?
So if you know that that's what it's down to, you know, then I would look for the material changes that the cat has had. So it could be, is it down to the children just pursuing the cat? So maybe the cat has, you know, half a dozen favorite resting places, which it can either no longer access because our stuff's everywhere, or that there's someone in the room, so the cat doesn't really feel like it's very relaxing, or the children are being, you know, just active around the house like kids are. So it might be that we have to think, okay, do we need to provide other areas where the cat can go? Definitely some house rules with the kids and the rest of the family about, you know,
training children too.
Yeah, I mean, we're all part of the same family, so it would be, okay, I'm going to set a timer now, and for the next 3 hours we're not going to bother the cat, you know, or something like that people can relate to. And I must say, like, part of our job as behaviorists is to change people's behavior, otherwise we can't change the animal's behavior, you know, we can't do a lot about it. So rather than telling people don't
say that again, because I think the video just kind of jammed a bit.
So
just repeat that, because that's quite a good point.
What we need to do in my job is, you know, we talk to the family and we try and help them to change what they're doing as well, so that we can help the animal change the animal's behavior. So if there's an interplay between what the people are doing and what the pet is doing, then we need to get the people to change a little bit as well, so that we can help the pet. So if we don't do that, then, you know, there's going to be no changes at all. So what I like to do, if I'm particularly working with children, is I try and get them on board, rather than saying, you know, don't do that. And I think most children understand don't be spiteful, but cuddling a cat doesn't feel spiteful to a youngster. It feels like it's the thing that you know, I'm doing that because I love my cat, you know. So but the cat might have very different views. So I like to be kind of collaborative with family and say, okay, you know, how can we help the cat? What would you like to do? Can you have a cuddly toy that you can cuddle, say, and pretend it's your cat and do all the care things, and teach them about how to look after the animal, which also includes, you know, when the animal's sleeping, you know, they need to rest. How does it feel when you get woken up? You don't like it. So can we leave them to rest for now and put them into like an animal care project almost, where we decide what does my cat need today? My cat needs this, this and this. Okay, shall we all do that? Yes. Rather than don't touch the cat, because I just think they'll just do it when you're not there, and they don't have to be naughty kids to do that. You know, even with adults now, if you say don't touch that paint, it's wet, people will still go, oh, is it? You know, so I get it. You know, I get it. So
I feel like you're living in my house, Karen, because I painted all of the weekend, and that's exactly what happened. I'm gonna have to go inside and check for cameras. Freaking out, Karen. It feels like we've got to educate everybody in the family, you know, so that we have this kind of cohesive understanding that we've all got to do the same thing. And I know something you've spoken to me about before is about consistency, delivering that message consistently, so there's no confusion, that the animal, the dog or the cat, knows what is expected of them, how to behave, and hopefully live a happy life with us, right?
Yeah, I mean, if we don't show them how we do things, then they're never going to know. And they've got, obviously, Mother Nature's given them a bunch of instincts, and those are specific to their species. So, you know, you're going to see dogs do a load of things they want to do, and cats do a load of things they want to do. And to some degree, you can manipulate those to suit the family lifestyle. And to some degree, you can't manipulate those. And we have to accept a layer, you know, of, okay, so my cat may want to scratch the wallpaper. They may want to, you know, have the biggest litter tray in the world because they don't like a little one. Do you see what I mean? So there's certain things that we can help them with. And it's about having boundaries for those, you know, and achievable boundaries. I don't think that.
So what do you do then if you've got a cat that is scratching, or a dog, a cat or a dog, that is doing something in the house which is destructive, or, you know, let's say scratching the wallpaper? The first reaction for many people, I think, would be to shout and to get angry.
Yeah.
What
yeah.
do instead?
I mean, it's hard not to, isn't it, when it's something that's valuable to you? So, you know, we're all human beings. It's not what I would use as a long-term tactic. I know that some people do, but I think the problem with it generally is that the animal is doing something that's perfectly natural to them. So it's much better to have lots of opportunities for them to scratch things that you want them to scratch. And then I know some people will say, well, I've got a scratching post and I've got this and I've got that. Is it in the same place that they want to go and basically practice, you know, scratching, sort their claws out? And also there are scent glands between their pads, so they're actually marking scent. So if there's an area where they're doing it, you're far better to put something there that is preferable for you to let them scratch. You can block off areas so that they get, you know, they don't do it, but you have to provide somewhere where they can do those things. Same with puppies. You know, dogs in particular, they might scratch or dig, but puppies especially more like to chew on things. Again, they are going to chew, so, and they need to because they're teething, so you need to provide as many other equally, if not better, alternatives for them. So it's no good just giving them a rubber toy and saying, here, this is much better than, you know, chewing my shoe, because your shoe is full of human scent, you know, and it's made of a lovely, you know, most likely leather or something that's quite nice on their teeth. If you just hand them a rubber or a plastic toy and go chew that, there's no comparison. So what we do instead is think, okay, we've got to activate their senses, we've got to give them something that's good texture, that's safe, that they don't eat it, and that actually has a scent attached to it. So that's when we start putting food inside these toys, or, you know, sticky kind of substances like, you know, the kind of doggy spreads that you can get. They're much better as a deterrent and an alternative. So it's that kind of thing. Rather than trying to suppress a natural behavior, we just shift it onto something that's more preferable for us, you know.
Right. So instead of, like you say, instead of suppressing, I know particularly with cats, it's about creating a land of plenty, isn't it? But in a way that is, I know a lot of cats are quite shy, and some cats don't even like eating or drinking in front of people or other cats. They like to do it on their own, don't they? So trying to understand what that cat's needs are, and being sensitive to it.
Yeah, I think especially if you've got multiple cats in your house, especially at the moment, you know,
most
or
people do. If they have a cat, they have 2 or 3.
Yeah. I mean, I'd love to have another cat, but I just don't think my cat would like it. I mean, we've got 4 dogs and a cat, and he gets on with everybody, you know. And he's but I think another cat, I don't think he'd want to share all of his access. And I think that's what you're getting at, isn't it? Is that if they've, especially I think if they're indoor as well, there's a certain amount of territory and that is limited. So the more we can provide, you know, the golden rule for that sort of thing is per cat, you know, one resource plus a spare. So if you've got 5 cats, 5 feeding stations, 5 water stations, 5 litter trays plus 1, so that they've always got alternatives, because they will, well, you sort of mentioned they don't like being watched, you know, they don't want another cat staring at them. It may be that they've been ambushed, but maybe not. Maybe they're just being stared at, you know, they can be stared at from the top of the stairs to the bottom of the stairs. It's as simple as that, and that can really be quite threatening for some cats. So just, this is a good opportunity, I think, for us while we're around our pets, if we're at home, make a little list of those kind of little routines that they have. You know, what time of day do they do that? Where do they sleep? Where do they eat? Which litter tray, if you've got a cat, which one are they using? And then where do they cross paths with the other cats? Because that's always really, really interesting information, because you'll find that they're quite habitual. And then if there are problems, if I was looking at a behavior issue, I'd be like, okay, we need to list all of these things, because what we'll learn is where are the conflict points, because they won't want to share the same space, or one of them is being stared at from a cat outside staring in, you know, those kind of things. They're amazing. They're amazing, amazing creatures, and they have so much depth. So just to sort of have a kind of superficial view, I think, is a real shame. So it's a really good chance for us to get that in-depth.
We could probably do a whole podcast just about cats, really, couldn't we? Just about one part of a cat. But I also, tell me if you agree with this, have heard that, you know, for us, eating is a very social experience. We like to be around people and to chat, and etc. And with cats, we've tended to humanize them and put two cats, two bowls together and food together and expect them to enjoy that eating process. But I have heard that actually is not the best way for cats to eat. They actually like eating in isolation, that they don't like eating in partnership. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, as a general rule, that's what I would suggest. You do get a situation where, because it's a bit of a shame, really, because they're hungry, and some cats love their food. I mean, we've all heard of the cat that absolutely loves their food, so they will be the one that's at the food bowl, and then if the other cat moves away, they'd eat theirs as well. And sometimes they're a bit overweight as well, because they just eat everything in sight, and they'll raid the treat cupboard, and, you know, it's a giveaway, really. So if you then put that cat next to one that is a little bit less like that, it's quite easy for that other cat to feel a bit overwhelmed by the pull of this cat wanting everybody's food. So yes, they might tolerate it because they're hungry and because they want to eat, and because that's what they get. If they don't eat there, they don't get anything. But it's not the nicest situation for them. And what you can sometimes find is that, they'll eat their food, but there might be other problems in the home. So they might be squabbling elsewhere, or that tension that is, created bubbles over in other areas. So it's the same with dogs. I very rarely feed my dogs within eye contact of one another. And it doesn't have to be that they're not in the same room. I just don't want their faces close together, because I just think if one of my dogs is super hungry one day and the others are feeling a little bit down for whatever reason, they might just be a bit tired, then that's me setting up a bit of conflict over a resource. So I try not to do that with any pets, no matter what. It's a bit like, I mean, you mentioned about us and why, we'll socialize, but imagine, Kelly, if you're like eating your favorite meal, so whatever that might be.
Karen, don't go there. I don't want anyone eating.
Yeah, so you've got, you've got your face in your roast dinner or your chips or whatever, and somebody's fork comes over and starts going, I quite like that, or they're just looking at your plate. You might feel a little bit unsettled. If it's your family, you probably let them go a bit further than if it's someone you don't know. But having said that, it doesn't matter. They'll only get 1 or 2 chips before you start going, hey.
But it's a bit like that famous scene from Gavin and Stacey. I don't know if you've seen it, when Smithy, they order their Chinese meal, and he's having this and this and having this, and then they all want to share, and he's like, step away from my food.
You've been thinking about my boona. You've been thinking about my boona, haven't you?
Yeah, it's Indian food, not Chinese. Yeah, exactly.
We put it all in the middle and have a bit. No. So I think it's, and I'm not saying that every pet has this same issue, or every person, but if you've got those things bubbling away under, at some point somebody's tolerance is going to drop, and you will get a Smithy moment. It's like, I don't want this. Just because we're polite and we live together and we rub along quite happily most of the time, it doesn't mean that it doesn't bother us. So I try and just keep the peace generally and be like, okay, I respect your need to eat in peace. I don't disturb my dogs while they're eating. I don't let my cat be bothered by anyone else while he's eating. He's got his own little space where he goes and has his dinner. I don't need to bother him while he's having his food. I don't need to have like the dog or another cat peering at him. You know, it just doesn't make logical sense anyway, does it really?
So what, I have to ask this question then, what is your thinking on, maybe, which is maybe an archaic approach with dogs, that you should be able to take their food bowl away without being aggressive, and if they're aggressive there's a problem? You know, you hear that kind of old school kind of approach to dog training. What's your thinking on that?
From my practice experience, so in terms of learning, I can understand why it wouldn't work, but also from my own experience of dealing with dogs with resource guarding issues, very often, even you can see it in very young puppies, the owner was given poor advice, which was, oh, you know, give them their food and then take it away, and then give them their food and then take it away. And that is such bad advice. It's really risky.
But it's common though, isn't it?
It is common.
And it's the internet thing. I'm sure you probably find it. Or people talking in the park, taking dogs. Every dog owner is an expert, right? You know, or you must.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and you're the expert on your own dog, and so you should be. But the problem is that, you know, if you compare that with somebody who works with dogs all the time, and we probably see, I don't know, in a normal circumstance about 40 a week, that's very different to having had dogs all your life. Do you see what I mean? Or, you know, so on balance, if I'm looking at what the dog's learning, what they're learning is that people coming towards it is a threat. They're learning that hands reaching down are going to take something away, which means the dog, if the dog values what it is, then they won't want you to do that. And so some dogs don't value their food that much, and they will kind of go, doesn't matter if you take it away. And they're the people going, well, you should be able to take your dog's food away. That advice then trickles over to somebody whose dog either medium cares or really cares about their food. And they're the ones that then develop and teach the dog to chase the person away from their bowl because the person is about to take it away. So it's nonsensical. It really is. And it's extremely dangerous with any animal that values something, and you just keep taking it away. It doesn't teach them that you're in charge. It teaches them that you're not very nice, and it teaches them that you're a threat. So if you want that kind of relationship with your dog, then that is a choice that you make, but that is what happens. You know, it doesn't, you know, elevate you to some great status, because we don't use that anymore. Yes, you have to be in control of your dog. Of course you do, but you don't bully it into doing things. So it's much better, especially when they're a tiny puppy, to give them maybe half of their food, keep the other half ready, and just as you go past them, just put a bit more in. And as you go past them, just put a bit more in. So they learn, people approaching me when I've got food is great, actually. It's no big deal. Come on over, give me some more. Hands always give, they don't take.
Yeah, I so love you, Karen. And it reminds me of something that you said to me once before, which, you know, brute force, so you didn't use these words exactly in paraphrasing, but brute force and intimidation and forcing dogs to do things, making them scared, it will work to an extent in many situations, but it's not nice, and it reduces trust.
Yeah.
So why would you want to do that? Why would you want to break down trust with your child, your partner, your dog, your cat? Why would you want to do that? And actually, I think it says more about the person that's doing that.
Yeah.
It's not kind, is it?
I mean, and I'm coming from a place of experience in the sense that when I started, that's what we were told. You know, that's how we were trained. You use this old-fashioned dominance word, and you dominate the dog, and the dog has to blah blah blah. And people got bitten. Even on TV, people get bitten. You know, we work with dogs that are severely aggressive in my job, and we don't want the dog to practice. We don't want them to bite anybody ever again. We don't want us to get bitten. We have to be safe. We have to negotiate with what the dog is frightened about rather than try and force it. And you might be able to force a dog that's smaller than you, or you might be more powerful and force the dog to do things. But there are going to be people in your family that can't do that. And your dog is not an idiot. The dog will learn, most dogs will learn, okay, I'm not letting you do that again. So that's when the dog then escalates what they used to do. So they might have gone from air snapping to actual biting, biting to biting harder, biting to biting more and more often, until all they're trying to do is tell you, can you just stop that for a moment? You know, and there are much better ways to work around these problems and to still end up with a safe dog, a safe person. I mean, this is quite heavy stuff really, but I just want to make sure that while we're in our houses with our dogs at the moment, that we're not going with that old style advice and making things really bad for ourselves, because I think it can just become like a melting pot of dangerous tactics, you know. So being physical, forcing, those kinds of things. There are kinder ways to do it. There are really effective ways to do it. It doesn't mean you're weak. We always say kindness isn't weakness, because you work around things, and so they're intelligent enough to understand what we really want. And often, if a dog is behaving aggressively, the rest of the time the dog's absolutely fabulous. It's literally just that situation. So it might be over the food bowl, it might be over the toy, it might be over the thing that they've pinched and run off with. We can work around that to some degree. So I think it's just a dangerous game, that old style stuff, and it's certainly not something I would want to do anymore. Haven't for a long time.
And talking about food, moving away from dog food or dog food, not cat food in this situation, and our food, and we're eating, and we may be at a table, maybe you have dinner on our lap watching the news about COVID-19. Not because it's it's only so much
everywhere. Yeah.
And the dog is there, or the dogs are there, and they're dogs. A dog is a dog is a dog, and the dog sees the food and wants the food, and is living at home with you, and it's all consuming and not getting out as much, blah blah blah. What do you do? And the dog is trying to take the food. What again, the instinct is to shout, to say no. And what's your advice?
I mean, again, coming back to, I suppose my tactics are always, if you do something, then, and it's rewarding the dog for some reason, then the dog's going to do it again. So even if you say, oh well, I don't give him anything until the end of my meal, what happens is, it's not a bad thing necessarily, although we don't want them to kind of have this mixed nutrition. I think it would be a little bit risky, but the dog would just stare at you until you've finished, or they'll wait until they hear the plate scraping and then they'll come over. So it's easier if you don't share like that, because what we tend to do is intermittently reward them. So we become like a bit of a slot machine. So the dog is always going to gamble on getting something from us. They'll look at us and go, any minute now, any minute now. So I think if you can do that, you're amazing for a start, because it's really, really hard to be that consistent. If you do have a dog that has learned to, just kind of try and beg from you, take food from you, and you don't want them to do it, my goal would be, well, what do I want my dog to do instead? Do I want them to lie down in their bed? Do I just want to distract them by giving them a food containing toy whilst I have my meal? Because that might just get me out of the problem. Yes, you can shut your dog out. I mean, I'm not saying that that's the most perfect long-term strategy, but if it really is something that you're struggling with and it's, making you really stressed, shut them out with something they can do. And then you get to eat your meals in peace. But you also have to have this house rule of like, okay, we don't give the dog any food off human plates at all, ever. And then
there's a consistency thing again.
Yeah, if you just try and ignore it, some people say try and ignore it, which I think works in the short term with some dogs. But what often happens is the dog doesn't like being ignored and will go, they haven't noticed me. So they will start pawing at you to get you to notice them, or they might bark at you. And then, of course, it's really hard at some level to ignore that, because they're clawing at you, or the cat is hooking your hand. I don't know if you've ever had that, or they're literally woofing straight in your face if your dog's sat there going, hey, so that gets to a pitch where you just think, oh, I can't ignore this now. And the minute you then reward that by either going, all right then, here you go, or be quiet, the dog goes, so to get their attention I need to bark full force. And that's what worked last time. So I'm not going to bother with all the polite looking at them. I'm going to just go straight in with the barking and the clawing at them. So what we've effectively done there is we've taught them the higher level of interaction, ways to get a human's attention, bark really loud. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah, no, they're flipping clever, aren't they? Let's be honest.
Yeah. I mean, humans do it, children do it. That whole thing about mum, like that. And then finally we go, yeah. So they don't start on the quieter level because it didn't work. So we'll just do it. So it's not spiteful, it's not naughty as such, it's just kind of, well, I need something and you've got it. So but we can retrain that.
You mentioned barking, and you again made me think of something. I'm sure you're following me, Karen. Are you sure you're near Peterborough, or are you in Northampton now? On my daily run this morning, and I heard I was listening to the birds, it was beautiful, it was raining, but it was still lovely outside, and all of a sudden I heard the familiar sound of loud barking coming from one particular house where I live, closely followed by a very aggressive sounding neighbour who is obviously used to this dog barking, and maybe it's barking more and more now that that we're in lockdown, shouting, "Will you stop that dog up?" And they use an expletive, Karen, I'm not going to use on this recording, but you can imagine it's quite annoying. And it made me, I was shocked with what I heard, and it was very loud barking, but I did have some sympathy for the neighbour, because I'd imagine that that neighbour is hearing it continuously, and then you've got like noise pollution and all of that. So what do you say to people, maybe as a final question, that if they've got a dog at home and it's barking, you know, and there's nothing there, there's no postman, there's no one in the street, there's nothing, it's just wind blowing around and they're barking. Is it boredom? What are they doing, and what can you do to help that?
Well, it could be scent, don't forget, because we have absolutely no concept of what that must be like. So, you know, it could be a bitching season somewhere up to a mile away or whatever.
That's not a nice way to talk about me, Karen.
A female dog. Actually, you'd be amazed how many spam filters get rid of that word now because they don't like the use of it, but it's actually a female dog. So it could be something like that. So it could be something that we just, how can we possibly know what that is like? Obviously, dogs have an incredibly acute sense of hearing, so you know, some more than others as well, so they are very environmentally aware, if you see what I mean, about the things that are going on around them. So it may be that we've just, you know, to them we must feel like blunt instruments, I think, sometimes. So it could be things like that. It could be that they are predicting something, so they've heard a dog further down, like in where I live, everyone's got terriers all the way along the back of the houses. So if one goes off, say a hot air balloon flies over, one dog barks at it, every dog down the street, you'll hear them go like a little chain. So that can actually trigger a response, but it's always for a reason, usually. So it could be that they are alerting, it could be that they're frightened, it could be that they are you know, like I say, frustrated because they want to get out and they can't, you know, to reach, you know, the dog down the road that's, you know, in season or whatever. So there are pretty much always reasons, if the dog's healthy, that they are barking. Barking is an expression of something, isn't it? So the little detective part of me wants to go, okay, so what's causing them to bark? Is it that, you know, Kelly's just run past? Is it that? In which case, I definitely have had clients that have come to me recently and said, it didn't used to be a problem so much, it was a bit on and off. Now we've got a public footpath going around past our house, and the dog is there constantly because people are taking their daily exercise and they can't go far from home, so they're all up and down the path all day and it's driving my dog. And that is extremely difficult. I do think, you know, sympathy, because that's hard work. What I tend to do is teach the dog that if they want to alert about something, so rather than just barking their faces off around the fence, come in the house and tell me, you know, so come back here. And I always teach the dogs, I go out there with them, I might even put them on a lead or a slightly longer lead and hold it just loosely, and then call them back to me and give them something that they like. So it could be their toy, it could be me running around playing, it could be giving them some food, any of those things. And every time I see that moment where my dog's just going, oh, there's something there, before they start barking, ideally, then I would call them back to me, give them something else to do, ask them to lie down, ask them to sit, so that they just calm down again. Now, some of us might say, well, I got a dog to make that kind of noise, it's just too much. So at that point I might say, okay, look, decide how many barks you want, how many and what intensity do you want, and then train the dog. Okay, a couple of those is fine, now you've got to come back. But you do have to take it from a very low level. It's not a good idea to wait there while your dog's absolutely berserk and then try and train them. You take them out there, got more opportunity at the moment when there's nothing going on. First, train them, whatever your magic word is that means come back here and let me know there's somebody there, you know. So it could be come, it could be what is it could be anything like that. But the goal is that the dog, rather than barking at the fence, says, hey, there's something there, by coming back to you, sitting there, coming back to you, lying down. If they're worried and they're afraid of what's outside, then it might be that you have to take a similar tack but slightly different. It depends really, but you've got to think, I don't want my dog to be worried, so how can I get them not worried about things? So I would probably look at that in a little bit more detail, because we don't want our dogs to be stressed, you know, and barking can be a sign of that. So it might be that we have to desensitize them to whatever's happening. So it might be jets going over, those kinds of things. So it's a bit more complicated than me just saying call them back to you, because it depends why they're doing it. But that's what I want everyone to think.
It's a bit more complicated than just shouting out shut up?
Well, the problem with yelling at them is that it sounds like you're joining in.
Oh, okay, right.
You
Let's
know,
have a party.
yeah. So you could be basically going, yeah, great, let's carry on, bark, bark. You know, so especially with us,
Okay.
we're shouting in the same sort of tone, aren't we? The sort of anxious. You know, I always say to people, you know, put on your loveliest, go on then, you know, Mary Poppins voice, la di da. They have to do it because that's the idea. You know, they're not allowed to just go, yeah, yeah, in a minute. You know, I'll finish this first. You train it so that they do it straight away, and they don't do it when, you know, they don't wait for you to repeat yourself. But just
Gosh,
yelling at
okay.
them is, you
We
know,
have to be so conscious of what we're doing and saying. It's yeah.
well, you know, all animals are, because they don't use language. I mean, obviously they understand the sounds we make, but they don't use language like we do. They are fantastic observers of us. You know, they're really good. They know our routine. They know what we do when, you know, they're really good at it because it's an excellent survival tactic amongst other things. So, you know, don't be surprised if your dog knows when you're thinking of doing something, they suddenly jump up like, "Hello," you know, you're about to do that. You haven't thought that you've given off any signals, but you definitely have. It's just that you're not aware of them.
Gosh. Okay, that's quite profound. That's a good
Slight,
thing to finish on.
slightly
I mean,
spooky.
yeah, it feels. I don't think many people. I certainly didn't realise that. That's yeah, it's quite an aha moment for me. Just to finish with, then, we know we've got lots of people in lockdown that are shielding, that can't go out for the foreseeable. Maybe they're poorly, they're protecting. They're not wanting to go out with their dogs, their cats. They're in quarantine altogether. What one thing can they do for their dog or their cat that's going to help their dog or cat to be happy? And we'll finish there.
I
Tricky.
think, I mean, I think that obviously they still need exercise. If you're not able to get them out for exercise, you know, that's, if that becomes impossible for you, remember that going for walks is about experience. It's not just about moving their legs. So you can get them to move their legs in and around the house, even if you don't have a garden. Even, you know, you can, you know, play hide and seek with them if you're able to do that. You know, hide their food so they have to go and find it, get those legs moving. Obviously playing with their toys, lots and lots of things where they are using their brain. So you know, mental exercise is just as important part of their well-being. So think of little games. There's hundreds of games out there where you can do things. You don't have to spend any money. Just simple things like I say, you know, which hand is it in, or hiding things under pots, or getting your cat to just not eat straight out of a bowl, to actually dig it out of somewhere. You know, those kinds of things I think are really useful because they activate their natural instincts for foraging and those kind of things. They give them a bit of a puzzle, so they've got to work it out. It's a bit of problem solving. And if you move things around a lot, they get exercise as they're moving about. So there's quite a few things you can do, you know, indoors. And one of the things I've just written about is obviously think about safety. Make sure they're not on a slippery floor or going to hurt themselves, or you're going to trip. But even just sacrificing a few settee cushions so they can clamber up and down them, you know, but be careful, don't hurt them, but give them something physical to do that is not, you know, or hide things
physically and mentally at the same time.
Right, absolutely. And just because they just don't go marching around the block as much as they used to, they do still need sniffs, they do still need sounds, they do still need all those things, but mostly you can provide those in the house as much as possible.
That's great, because I think a lot of people are feeling guilty, maybe that they can't go out and about as much as they would have wanted to because they're protecting themselves. I think it's important to remember that you know, short-term pain, long-term gain, and we've got to look after one another and our dogs as part of that family.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough at the moment, and we recognise that. You know, I think it's important that we recognise that you are allowed to take your dog out for exercise. You know, what we don't want is people trying to find ways around the recommendations. You know, you are allowed to take your dog out. They are allowed to go out to exercise. You don't have to keep them in. You know, you don't have to keep your cats in if they don't normally stay in. You know, good hygiene, washing your hands before and after handling your pet is a really good thing to do anyway. So whatever happens, you can do that. So there are lots of things that maybe we've had to change and we've all had to adapt at top speed, but that doesn't necessarily mean they have to suffer.
Yeah, and obviously this is very much a human to human disease, so let's not worry too much about always be cautious and wash hands around dogs and cats, especially before and after handling, but let's not lose too much sleep. Only two dogs, to my knowledge, have contracted SARS-CoV-2. and only one cat, and the cat made a full recovery. The German Shepherd made a full recovery. The Pomeranian that everyone was talking about, the most famous Pomeranian in the world now, unfortunately did pass away, but was 17 years old, and there's no evidence to show that the dog passed away from COVID-19. So we do need to keep it into perspective, but wash hands, exactly as you say. Try to enjoy people must try to enjoy spending time with their dogs and cats, I guess. And yeah, take on board everything you've just said. So thank you so much, Karen.
You're very welcome. I mean, if anyone has further questions, then do come to us. There's, we've got probably a longer in this situation, so the resources are there. The help is out there. So if you're really stuck, then do seek help. There's no reason to sit at home and worry.
How can people contact you or learn more about you? Is there a website or email address that you want to pass on, or?
Yeah, I mean, my website, I'm on Facebook, Karen Wild, so you can access me there. Also, my website is pawprintpets.com, so you can Google my name and pawprint or something like that will come up, or you can email me, Karen@pawprintpets.com, and that will come straight through to me. So, if people are needing assistance, we are still providing the service. We are able to do online. We do need to go via vets, obviously, if it's a behavior problem, because we want to make sure your pet's well, but it doesn't mean to say that you can't seek help. You can. So it's always worth just checking to see if that's out there for you.
Yeah, the positives of the Tinternet.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's good. I like the internet. I think it's a great place.
All right, well, thank you for your time, Karen.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Speak soon.
Only you know your pet's individual character. But IAMS knows the nutrition they need for 7 signs of healthy vitality, all with a great taste. Full of character, full of IAMS.